years. Okay.
Yeah.
It should be gone for a bit.
Yes. Hello. This is
Oh,
the News Streaming Network.com, WGSN-DB Going Solar Network Radio and TV podcast, number one internet singles talk network. And this is Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry. Hi, Barry.
hi, Christine.
Today we're going to talk about something we have heard people say so many times.
Oh, yes.
Why is dating so different now?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is. It's very different.
On so many levels,
Nobody would say it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's very, very different. And as you said, on so many levels. I mean, one of the things I've told people is that, I used online dating from 2001 to 2005 when I met my late husband. And then we got married in 2007. And then he died in 2012. And even in that short span of time, when 4 years later, I went back to using online dating, it was really different in that short time. So if
Right.
you have not been in the dating world for 20, 30, 40 years because you were married for a long time and now you're not for whatever reason, divorced or widowed, it's really different. It couldn't be more different.
Well, no, it could be even more different, I'm sure.
Yeah. But it's a lot different.
Yes, it is. Quite dramatically so. Yes, absolutely.
Dramatic. That's the right word.
Yeah.
So I think one of the reasons we're going to talk about certainly the reasons first and then what the heck to do about it.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is when we were younger, we were surrounded by our target market. There were potential people in our age group, single, possibly looking to get in a relationship everywhere. We met them at school. We met them in our neighborhood. We met them at work. We met them at clubs. We met them through our friends.
So, for a social network. So we met them at parties. We met them in all sorts of gatherings. Met them at church.
Yes. They were everywhere all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And not only was there this abundance, the really great thing was you got to know each other in this very easy, casual way. You saw how they interacted with other people. You got to see how their personality was over time without having to really work at it. If you were out in a group or part of a social club or part of a civic organization or at work, you got to see them on a often really regular basis. And so you get to see them in different seasons, in different moods, in different circumstances. And you could really check people out in kind of this obtuse, very clandestine way.
Absolutely.
And to decide if they were somebody that you'd want to get to know better with lots of evidence beforehand.
Oh, yeah. And also, I mean, one of the things I remember vividly when I was younger was the idea of when couples would try to match up their friends.
Yeah.
As like blind dates, they go as a foursome. And I remember that a few experiences of those, not always working, but
yeah,
the opportunity to meet somebody new who I didn't expect to meet because my friends connected us was a gift that doesn't happen as much anymore. Even that's not really got away in terms of it could happen now.
Yeah.
People don't seem to do that anymore. But back in the day, I remember, it'd be this trepidatious excitement, uncertainty type thing. When your friend said, just show up here with us, we'll meet you there. So because the thing is, and this is one of the key things of this methodology, is you had somebody there who was a friend of yours. Even if it didn't work out, you could have fun.
Yes.
So those sort of ideas made it much more approachable, and sometimes it worked out. So It was definitely interesting, another way of doing things back in, quote, the old days.
Yeah, the olden days. Yeah, it's because you had a wing person automatically or people. The funny thing was when you started saying friends would fix this up and sometimes it didn't work out, there'd be times like, have you met me?
I was going to say
the other person and I would both go, why? What were they thinking? We're so different in not the right ways. I mean, sometimes different could be very intriguing, but they'd be like, no. And it wasn't anything bad or wrong. They were just not right for each other. Yeah, those were such funny dates. And I loved when I get to, so then the thing is when they tell you they're going to fix you, you get to look, well, tell me about them and what do they look like and what kind of things do they like to do and what's happened in their life and what's their family like. I mean, we would sort out that kind of stuff ahead of time and you felt like you had a trusted source to get it from. Yeah.
The thing is, and a couple of things I want to speak on, there's a lot on this journey we'll talk about, but I remember growing up how yes, the dating pool was very convenient, it's local, but also very limited as well. So in some ways, our goals weren't necessarily as highfalutin as they've become since we expanded from the original place. It's good for
I love that
you.
word.
Yeah. And so I
Mhm.
remember, as a kid, as a teenager, definitely the dating pool was very local. And I was just comparing notes, and I remember that when I was in high school, one of my schoolmates, well, one of my fellow students, by the time, God, what I think by the time I was 16, she'd already had a baby, and she basically was living in the house she grew up in, had a boyfriend, and had a baby by the time she was 16. I think by the time I graduated from high school, which was 18, she had 2 kids.
Wow.
And so part of me, I think the way, and I'm looking at this from a point of view of being a gift, seeing that what looked like to me at that time, again, 18, not very wise, not very mature. However, looking at that and seeing how limited that was because it was locked in at that point, I knew I couldn't do that. It wasn't in my makeup, it wasn't in my design, wasn't in the way I was built, that it wasn't going to work for me. And I didn't know it was going to go a whole different extreme. But at the time, I just thought I need to, like, something innately within me said, there's got to be more out there than just this. So even though I was in a fairly local dating pool, my vision was going further than that. I think a lot of people have that experience when they get out into the world, so to speak.
That is such an interesting point because not everybody would. I had a couple of people that got pregnant in high school and had babies at graduation.
Yeah.
And it did make you go, gosh, that really could happen. And do I want that to happen to me? And what would I like differently? Which certainly doesn't happen for everybody. And you don't
Right.
know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So to go along with that, we had very different goals then, because usually when we grew up, not as much right now, when we grew up, generally people were looking to get married certainly in their 20s.
Yeah.
It was very clear that 20s was the time to get married and start a family and to now have children growing up in your 30s. It really just was the pattern, and not everybody did it. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say the bulk of people did it.
Oh, yeah.
And if that was your goal, you sorted your potential partners with, did they have a job? Did they have a car? Did they want children? How did they feel about raising children? And how many children did they want? I mean, that was such a normal conversation to have in our early dating years during the olden days. I love that we're going to call it that. Because now people in that age group, a lot are putting off not getting married till their 30s, not having children till their 30s or even their 40s, if they have children at all. So
Mm-hmm.
the younger people, their goals are a little different. They want to get schooling, they want to get jobs under their belt. But when we look back at how it was for us before, our goal was to get married and have kids.
Right.
And pretty much now for people over 50, I'd say the high percentage is not looking certainly to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of us prefer to not have somebody with minor children at home if we're certainly in our 60s.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily to get married. The number of people that want to get married, have a ceremony and a legal paper has also gone down. So when you think about, well, what is our goal now? That's also another reason that we would say out loud, dating's very different nowadays. If
Mm-hmm.
you're in this age group that we generally talk to of people over 50, you have to reassess, well, what is my goal now? And if I'm still going on feeling like the teenager I was the last time I dated, I haven't really even sorted that out. And where are my priorities? So it's going to feel really different if you haven't thought about what is it I need and want now.
That's the thing that having, for many people, gone through that first or second marriage and not had it work out as the romantic lifelong fairy tale that they thought it was going to be, that disillusionment, or at least that reality check for many people is such that when they look at dating now, they want companionship, yes, but they're not necessarily as invested in having that commitment of paperwork and of legality. They just want somebody they can enjoy the rest of their lives with as a companion, as a buddy, as a friend, as a lover, as all those things, but without the constraints that marriage also put on them in the past too. And so one of the things that I think people are doing as they get more mature is that they recognize that what's important isn't necessarily the great, I'm got married now, which again, for some of us, back in again, the old days, as we've been talking about that, the olden days, there was a goal to be married. That was one of the things that a lot of people had was, the goal was to get out of the house, find a partner, get married, settle down. And, I mean, in American dreams, the white picket fence and everything. But the reality is, for a lot of people, because the divorce rate was so high, that didn't work out. And so that fantasy or that fairy tale has dissipated. And so for a lot of people now in their 50s and even in their 40s are looking at relationships not through that lens anymore. And it may be a more mature, maybe at least a road that's what I'm looking for. A learned lesson that they won't have it that way, and it's okay not to.
Because you now have, as you've had life experiences, you go, oh, like you discovered early in school, there are other options, there are other decisions, there's other choices. And to now look at, maybe it was exactly what I needed then. What do I need now? And what would be different? So the other piece that I think is really important to address about why dating's so different now is all of our life experiences. It's given us worldliness and perspective and baggage. And everybody's going to have baggage. And it's, have you sorted it out? Is it huge? I mean, when we talked about being emotionally available, and unavailable, we went through this a lot. And I think it's something that really needs to be addressed here as well, about what could be getting in your way that you need to let go of from before, that made total sense to have then, but it's not working now. And the kind of people that you're looking for, are you attracted to baggage that isn't working for you and isn't working for them? So the longer we're alive, which is a really nice thing, because lots of people don't make it this far, to honor what are the things that I've gotten as a life experience that I need to let go of because it's hindering me now, or what should I enhance and make it even more of me? Because if you haven't done that sorting on your own and you don't know how to ask the other person about that sorting, you're just going to keep bumping up against it. So knowing, oh, now at this point in my life, I need to have this different conversation that there was no reason to have it before because you didn't have all that life experience. And now talk about your life experience, what's important to you now, what works for you now, what didn't work for you before and why, and to ask them as well. And I think people aren't prepared. They're so surprised when I suggest that they have these conversations and they're like, really? Why would we do that? Because aren't you just fascinated to get to know the other person? And then you get blindsided with things that, well, I didn't know that about you, or I didn't know that was important to you. And now I'm madly in love and the sex is great. And there's this big problem. So honor that you both have lots of lovely things to talk about and interesting things to talk about and interesting things to explore.
Well, we've in previous shows recently, we talked about deal breakers and other things and red flags, green flags. Yeah. I would suggest, not everyone's doing this, but I think we definitely could look at doing this when we go, first of all, before we even start, we'll talk about the dating apps and stuff in a minute too, is know what we really want. Because I'm sure when we were younger, very young, in fact, we didn't have enough worldly experience to realize how much we could actually have. So our list of what we wanted was pretty minimal. Again, married, settled down, kids, that sort of thing. Now, as mature adults, most of the time mature anyway, I would suggest that our criteria has become more crystallized and clear what we want, but also is expanded more so that we know we want someone who's going to be monogamous, someone who may have drunk in the past but is now sober, or someone who has a good relationship with their family if their family's still around. It's all these things that we now have seen as more important we didn't know before. So when we meet somebody, like you were saying, having a more active conversation, because there's a lot of things we want to find out that maybe they didn't tell us beforehand in their dating profile, or if the friends who connected us didn't tell us about them. We want to find out. So yes, our early conversations can be quite important to get some data points in place to go, yes, this is a good match, before we get emotionally connected and chemically bonded and sexually hooked up. So we could be, able to walk away with some level of, well, integrity, but also with clarity.
Oh, so vital and important.
Yeah.
And within that conversation, to be willing to be open and transparent, and offer them the opportunity to be open and transparent with you, so that the games that we're tempted to play about, well, gosh, they wouldn't like it if I said that, or what kind of a person believes that, I think was a lot what happened when we were younger. It certainly did for me. And that to grow up, that inside part of me has made dating really different, because as you and I have explained, the kind of conversations that we include, it's not the whole conversation, is what kind of personal growth I've done and what kind of personal growth have they done, because it's mandatory for me. I can't be with a partner. I can certainly have friends and acquaintances and clients, but I have to have somebody that's really invested in personal growth. And I would never have thought of that before. It was not necessarily a mandatory thing. And then, my hobby that's developed over time of I like hanging out with horses, and to find somebody that would be just as intrigued or interested or has them has now become very important to me. It's not the top, but it's up in there, the top ones. And that's a new thing too. So it doesn't have to just be, big, deep, huge things. Because like I have one more man than woman right now. For a while it was, it was only women, and then it was pretty even for a while. And now I have one more man than women coaching. And it's been really fun to have them hone their list, because they're really excited about making a list, and the things that they really want and need, and the things that are okay that they do that the woman doesn't have to do, or the varying degrees. And they're finding that the more clear they get about that, the more they're able to sort when they meet them, and the more that type of woman, they're putting themselves in the right places to meet those type of women. And so we didn't do that before. That wasn't really the broad goal of dating. It was so much more narrow, as you said. And I think our life experience has really broadened and given us an opportunity to say, do I want somebody that wants to travel? Because we couldn't do that before when you had little kids in your life, and now they're off having their own family. Do you want to travel? And what's your bucket list, and that you could discuss with somebody? Or do you want somebody who they want to do this huge garden thing with you? There's one of them that wants that, and he's found somebody. It's pretty fun. So that to think about, how do you want to spend from today on?
Yeah.
And I think we didn't think past house and kids because we couldn't. And now we're like, wow, there's this huge vista out there, these huge bunch of opportunities. And to find a playmate, a love mate, a companion, a partner encompasses so many more things now. And so I think people get frustrated with thinking it's too different. I think it's great opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like you, I have this a qualification for me about personal growth, having been in the personal development field for 40 years now. To be with somebody who's never done any work isn't going to be a good match angelically, because there's things that we're aware of that people who haven't done the work aren't aware of. It's that simple. The other part, and also resolution of past issues and healed wounds and everything else, which we talk about in our work. But the other part of that too, and this is something that I also reflected on, is, I met I'm on the dating apps, being single, and we'll talk about dating apps shortly. But a lot of women I've met are living within 30 miles of where they were born, and haven't got a passport, and haven't traveled that much. And so, being a foreigner in this country, I've been here for many, many years, that's a red flag for me. Because for me, not saying I'm going to do it all the time, but I have a passport and I can travel if I want to. I haven't done it for a while. But be with someone who also has got some life experience. They've explored other places, maybe lived in other places, or moved here from somewhere else. There's a sense that they're more independent of their home.
Yes.
I've noticed a sense of some people who haven't moved very far from where they're born tends to, I can't say it's global, of course, but it tends to be somewhat of an attachment they haven't let go of. And I don't want to be the one to teach them that, to be honest, because it could be a whole bunch
You hung
of
up
issues.
that part of your resume. I heard you say that you're not doing that anymore.
Exactly. So those things are important things too. And so again, we talk about, deal breakers and everything else too. It becomes clear what we value for ourselves. And one of the things I've talked about in my own work and what I hope to teach my clients is realizing that any relationship you have must be additive to who you are.
Yes.
Not something that pulls from you or makes you feel like you didn't have it before, something's wrong with you. So ideally, your life is such that you're happy being single, happy being on your own. So when you meet somebody, that becomes even an increase, a booster, an additive to your life. That's ideal as well.
So the other two big things that I think we need to talk about that are so different in dating now is online dating and scammers.
Oh, yes.
So
Oh, boy.
online dating, it had started around 2000-ish, because when I got on in 2001, it was still really new. And it's still the biggest pool of single people out there.
Yes.
Which means there's every kind of single person out there on the internet. And being diligent, being aware, being alert, making sure that you're not feeling desperate or lonely, because it makes you a target. So the good thing is there's lots of people. There's lots of people, and lots of really good people, lots of good men and women, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. And it takes time and energy and money. So you have to put that part aside to be able to have the time and energy and money to devote to using online dating. And to be aware of the people that at the least just aren't your match. And at the worst are out to take advantage of you sexually, monetarily, emotionally. So that has made people feel very negative about dating nowadays. And it's all takes education.
Right.
And so often people that were married for a really long time and haven't dated for a really long time go into dating, online dating period, but certainly online dating, so naive, uneducated. So getting some education about it first is mandatory. Because you can get so taken advantage of, and you can get really discouraged and really hurt easily if you're not paying attention. But it's not mandatory. It doesn't have to happen, but it will happen if you're not paying attention.
Absolutely. There was another piece that was in there that also I would suggest that something's happened in the last few years, especially, is the education people have gotten on the other side of the coin about narcissism, other thing, and other patterns out there, because that wasn't something we really talked about 25, 30 years ago. But now it's becoming more overt. Also, it's become clear that people who've been victims of that behavior, I'm using the term intentionally, have learned to be gentle with themselves about it, that they realize they didn't know then, so they couldn't do anything about it. Now they know better, a little differently. So education, yes, about dating apps, about the scammers, and about psychological dysfunctions out there in the world. I think they're definitely on the table now. And so for one of them, it's definitely becoming more conscious. People are more aware of the idea of what narcissists are, especially if they've been watching our podcast, listen to our podcasts. But also, and to go to the dating apps for a second, I do remember way back when a friend of mine used to run one of the companies where the dating sites, I don't know the websites at the time, but they had videotapes in archives. You go into their offices and you'd see dating apps that way. This is going way
Great Expectations. Yep.
A friend of mine used to work with them, and so that's not elevated, wrong word. That is become more and more modern. It's really changed because it became dating sites like Match.com was the big one back in the day, and still is to a large degree. But now it's moved to the dating apps, and the transition into apps has changed everything. Because even back in the old days with dating sites, they were a bit more manageable, and there was a certain level of authentication that was happening for people to join those sites rather. But the dating apps have become basically a money machine for most people who create the apps. So the verification and vetting systems aren't necessarily as strict or as effective to ensure that who you see on the dating apps is who they look like they're supposed to be. So the scammers have had a field day with the dating apps. And if you haven't watched the Tinder Swindler on Netflix, I think it was on, you should definitely watch it if you haven't seen that. But just in general, and I've had many friends and clients talk about this, where they got scammed mostly out of money, because that's what they go for. Because the person who was on the other side of the dating profile isn't the person who's on the screen in the comments. So, test and verify, check and verify, are important skills when you're dating on the dating apps. Because unfortunately, so many people, and I'm saying people, not just women, men too, have fallen victim to giving out their information before they know the person they're talking to is the real person. And I've had, thankfully, with one, combination with a couple of women I've met, but we started inside the app first, and then we moved to phone calls and that sort of thing. So if you are on the dating apps, a single person, particularly if you're a woman, an older woman, especially because they usually need the targets for these people, is definitely, and use this facility when you can. Is most of the dating apps have built-in audio and video functions, meaning you can call and video chat inside the app without giving up any personal information. And frankly, if I were you on the dating apps, to verify the person you're looking at is real, ask for a video chat. If they're a scammer, they won't do it.
Yep.
So little tips right there to get you started.
So important. And that's been such a problem that's given dating such a bad reputation right now, because people get taken advantage of, or they get their heart broken, and then they say the new way of dating is wrong and bad and only hurtful, and there's only jerks and there's only scammers and there's only people that want to take advantage, which is not the truth. The majority of people aren't scammers. They just aren't. And the scammers are prevalent. There really are. And so being diligent about it and knowing about them will help you not feel like the new way of dating is only bad. There's nothing good about it, which is why I consciously started out with, here's the things that aren't so bad about dating, rather than the hard thing, because we have to talk about the hard thing, because there's so many positive reasons to look at the freedom and the choices and the variety of ways that you can approach dating now that could be really healthy. So I'm going to go back to that word, because that's the other thing. Oh my God, there's too much variety and people can just swipe one way or the other too easily. Yes, that's true. That is part of the dating, especially the apps. I mean, they're so easy. Swipe, 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 swipe. Yep. Okay. What are you doing personally? Are you using a dating app? And how are you using the swipe? Are you saying, I'm just looking at their picture and I don't like it, so I'm swiping? Or do you look into more of the person? Do you care about looking at more of the person than just their physical part? Because for women especially, if there's nothing off-putting and he says something interesting, at least communicate with them. It gives you practice to talk. It doesn't mean you're even going to go out with them. It doesn't mean you're even going to talk to him. Just practice.
Yeah.
And so looking at it as it's a tool to get you whatever it is. You want a companion. Some people just want a companion. Some people really want a partnership. This is the tool to get you there, and to use it to your advantage and not let the other person take advantage. Because if you keep handing over your information and letting them be in charge, then you're not staying in control. You're not being in charge of your life.
Right.
And that's what the scammers are looking for, somebody that they can manipulate. Well, if you don't let somebody manipulate you, then you won't get scammed.
That is vital, I think, in this work. And yes, I love the idea of putting it in a place where you get to test drive and practice this way to get to be more comfortable in the conversation. I want to add one more piece to the mix of this about why dating is so different. Is back in, quote, the day, matchmakers were really like, they were yentas. They were very like deep into their work, and they had this great gift, but also they worked really hard. Unfortunately, many of the matchmakers around nowadays haven't done that and aren't that. And a lot of them are just numbers players. And unfortunately, and being connected to a lot of matchmakers, I I speak highly of some of them, but not all of them, because I've seen what's happened where matchmakers are using basically demographic information, basically, to put people together, height, age, location, without verifying people's, well, psychographic information, their emotional state, what they've learned, how they've healed, what's in the way, what their patterns are. And I've seen, unfortunately, the wreckage, for want of a better word, that I've seen of couples who put together by matchmakers that fell apart so quickly because they weren't pre-aligned, pre-assigned. So even using a matchmaker as a participant, as a client, you want to do your due diligence. You want to make sure that you choose wisely. And again, like you were saying, Christine, they can be very good and very wonderful and really clean. But going in like a Pollyanna mindset isn't necessarily the best way of doing it. So going with high hopes and intentions of what you want to have, and do your due diligence to verify, one, the service you're using, whether it's an app or a matchmaker or whoever you're using. But two, when you meet somebody, don't just jump in with both feet. Be somewhat cautious, not to be worried they're bad, but to make sure they're good. So focus it that way around.
So important. So I started out by talking about how we were surrounded by our target potential people to partner up with. And now we're not. Lots of people are retired and they're not in that atmosphere anymore. So now we need to be proactive. And if you're not used to doing that and you didn't have to do it before, now you have to really, it's best to think about it. To join, Meetup is my go-to thing. I think you'd be hard pressed to not find something that you would enjoy doing through Meetup in your area, unless you totally live in the boonies. And then you're just going to have to drive. But to join civic organizations, a church, a country club, a community center, the library. I can't believe how many programs my library has, from movies to lectures to authors that come and speak. And so when you go to this activity, you at least have one thing in common with everybody that's there. They like this author and they probably read this author's books. And if you already like that, then talk to the person next to you. And the way our library does it is they have out coffee and tea. So you can visit ahead of time, or you can visit after when you're standing in line to get your book autographed, and use those as opportunities like you did before, when there's these potential people for you to chat with, to practice first and then maybe meet somebody interesting. But it's hard because people will go, well, there's nobody interesting here. How do you know that? Because nobody makes your socks roll up and down. Well, that's not the only criteria that especially women need to use. Talk to them. You might find out something really interesting about them, even if they don't turn into a coffee date. You've practiced talking to a stranger with a really safe subject about, what did you like about the book? Have you read this author's other? You've built in conversation starters, which can be so hard for introverts, but this is built in. And often introverts are very big readers, so I send them to the library a lot. But to join an athletic thing, if you want to get out and walk, or you want to bicycle, or you have a dog breed, to search out activities, because they're just not going to come knock on your door, hun.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't stay home.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that's the good news, at least. I think it's been happening since we had the lockdown, is there are more social networking groups that get together, whether it's hiking or biking or cooking or feeding groups. I volunteer now fairly frequently where we take food bank boxes and we feed like less well-off families. I don't plan to meet. I haven't met anybody of these, from the crew that comes together, but I might. And I'm not saying that as an opportunity, but I'm saying get out and do stuff, especially if you're doing things of service. I think it's one of the best places. If you go work in, if you go to the animal shelters and help, play with the animals to make them feel better when they're not getting taken home by people. If you can do that without taking them home yourself, of course.
Oh yeah.
But you might meet somebody there. There are so many activities you can do. Like what you're doing with horses. There are places where you can actually go and ride horses in a more of a singles mixer type environment. So there's things you can do in the world that aren't just like hoping to go to a bar and meet somebody, which frankly is one of the worst places to go meet somebody nowadays because it's so noisy. And usually people are looking through a drunken haze, which isn't a good way either. So there are many ways of doing things out in the world, which have always been the way to meet new people, to become friends with, regardless of dating. So take the time to meet new people.
Such a good idea. And it gets you practice, as well as now, let's say, you've done your food thing and an animal thing, and now you reach out online to somebody and they say, well, tell me about your interests. And now you have things to talk about.
What a good
Because so
idea.
often people say, I'm going to start doing this when I have a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I need you to start doing something now.
Yes.
At least 2 things now that brings you happiness, brings you satisfaction, that you feel passionate about. Because the part that people feel discouraged about is they're waiting for somebody to do something with. So you need to go do something for yourself that's with other people. So that need, that's a real need, gets filled some. And then now you have even more of the energy to bring to be a more fulfilled partner when you talk to somebody out in the world or through a dating app. Because lonely, desperate is deadly. And the people who say they're waiting for somebody to come along so they'll start doing stuff are prey. They're just going to be prey. You need to fill up your life enough, not too much. We've talked about that. There's a happy medium, but to have some things that you feel passionate about, that get you up every day, that you feel like you're contributing to the world, that you get a feeling of getting back from them. It's essential. You have to add that to your diet of your life. Right.
And in fact, another piece of that I would add to the conversation is also take yourself out on dates. It's like finding ways to do things in your life where you do it when you're single. I go to the movies all the time on my own because I want to go see the movie. I don't want to wait for somebody to show up in my life to do it with. Often somebody's with a buddy of mine, but it's like just getting out to the movies on your own is a good thing. I go out to dinner on my own. Now, it may not be so easy for women, I understand, but do things for yourself that you would otherwise have waited for somebody to do it with you. Can one give you more bold, make you bolder, make you more comfortable in your skin? But 2, you might meet somebody else out there who's single who happens to be doing the same thing you are. So there are many ways of getting out in the world that are safe, that are smartly done for yourself, but also expand your horizon and expand your experience. So there are things you can definitely do quite easily, especially again if you live in a city that's more than a few hundred people. We can get to meet new people that way as well.
So what we're saying a lot in this talk is, now that you're an adult, you need to be proactive about your life in general, and certainly your dating life, where we could be kind of lazy before. We really could. We need to be more proactive now, because it's not just going to come to us like it did before. And if you put yourself out there, then it's amazing what will come. I mean, I know people who belong to a lot of meetups, because they would go to one and they would ask, what other things? And they go, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go join that. And then that one had something interesting and they go join that. And they have a lot of activities in their life, and they're meeting so many people that way. And so it's the same thing that happened before, where you are surrounded by people who are potential friends or partners. You just have to put yourself there. You have to be proactive about it. You have to search out something that seems interesting and go. And if you're afraid to go by yourself, which lots of women are, and that's perfectly okay, then find a friend. Even if it's a married friend, they're usually happy to go once or twice. People that aren't attached to their hip with their husbands love them madly, but are happy to go do stuff, and have them go with you once or twice until you've started making friends there that you feel like, oh, now I know people there, I'll be fine. And then if they belong to something else, somebody within that group, then you go to that next group with the friend you made in that meetup group. And then you've let your married person off the hook. You just have to make choices and decisions and use your time and energy for your betterment, for your activities, for your getting out there and living a more full life. Because as Dr. Laura says, is this how you want to live between now and dead? Sitting on your couch watching Netflix? Maybe not. I know she's really firm about that. If that is not your goal, if you want to start making friends and or find a partner, you just got to put your little body out there somewhere.
I'm going to throw something out as well that I talked about this before in other places, but I have another layer of it that showed up in my conversation, is that when we're on this journey of growth and evolution, it's almost like we're climbing the side of a mountain. And so when we're at the start, everyone's on the same level. There's lots and lots of people all in the same area, and that's the way it is. But as you climb the mountain, like any mountain, it starts getting narrow towards the top. So as you're climbing, as in raising your consciousness, raising your awareness, learning new things, having more life experience, you're climbing this mountain and getting higher and higher up, which in some ways can look like, oh my God, there's less and less people to choose from who are at this height, this level. So when you get to the top of the mountain, there's only small preference, small arrangement of people who've done the same things.
Yeah.
And part of me, when I said that, it's like, I understand that, but I didn't really like it. But then I realized there's something else. Is the more you climb the mountain, you get higher and higher up. What's happening is you're not so much just getting less and less people, but you're getting more concentrated. So the more alignment you have, the more possibility you have with the people who are doing the same sort of thing. So it isn't a bad thing to do things that expand your awareness and have you grow and evolve. It's a very good thing, in fact. So being in your life, loving your work, like saying, between now and when you're dead, what a wonderful way of saying it, that you can do in your life to have fun, enjoy who you are, and enjoy your own company, makes you more attractive. So do those things.
And I love your analogy of the mountain, because now you're going to be surrounded by even more of the people who make you feel uplifted, make you feel alive, challenge you in thinking about new things. You go, wow, it's more exciting. It's more up leveling. The more I have found that I do that, because I did have the same thing about, oh, there's less people. And what I found is there's more of the right people and less of the people that I'm not a match with. And it doesn't make them bad, just not the right people for me. And the concentration just keeps getting more dense. And it really is interesting, because I don't feel like it's less people. It feels like there's just the right number of people that are the right people. And that is kind of a fabulous place to be.
Absolutely. That's the thing. So to summarize in a lot of ways, what makes dating so different is, frankly, we have a lot more freedom now than we used to. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what you're used to. For some people, freedom is too scary because it's too many choices. However, when you start recognize that you have the freedom to choose what you want, rather than what your parents wanted when you were a kid, when you were a teenager, or your peer group forced into you when you were basically amongst people who didn't think you had the freedom to choose. Now you have more autonomy and more decision choices you can make. So this freedom is a good thing to have. It's a gift, not a curse. So recognize, and the good thing is, being in this place with life means you can actually have a lot more joy in your life, and so you can be actually I'm going to say a happier single, so you can be more attracted to a happier relationship.
Such a good point, Barry. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, the freedom that we can concentrate on the good parts of the freedom. Yeah. Because, gosh, it was so confining to have to raise children and get to raise children. And now you don't. And wow, who am I? I mean, that's a big conversation people have after that, or after being widowed. Who am I now? And to go, well, I have freedom to reinvent myself and be who I want and explore all these new things. And I think if you approach your life in general and dating specifically with, well, gosh, I'm going to try new things and experiment with new things and see what works for me now, that it can help keep switching you back to the more positive way of feeling alive every day, with all the opportunities out there, including all the opportunities there are to meet people and partner up if that's your goal.
Absolutely.
Oh, this has been such a fun conversation.
As always.
As always. So if you've said that to yourself, dating is so different now, and I'm confused and I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't think it's fun, or I think it's sort of fun, but it really could be more fun. Yes, Barry and I can help you with all of that.
Indeed.
So the way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com, and click on What's Holding You Back from Love. And that will give you access to my online calendar, and we can have a personal hour conversation about this to see, can we puzzle this out and get you feeling more positive about dating in the new world? Because it's not going to change. It's going to stay this way. Mm-hmm. You can also sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get repeats of this podcast, and you'll also get other things that I send out. I'm going to be having my class again next month. I'm very excited about that. So I'll be talking more about that. You can also click on all my social media at the bottom. It's all the cute little symbols of Facebook and LinkedIn and X that used to be Twitter, and Pinterest and YouTube and Instagram. See, I'm doing just as good as you, Barry, with remembering all of those.
It's great. I think it's amazing that it's become so easy now. I have to think about it.
Yes, it's really, we get to do it every week, talk about
Yes,
it.
we do.
So
Let's
tell
practice.
people how to reach you, Mr. Selby.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. You can reach me by my site, which is my name, which is barryselby.com, easy to find. The site is still in the process of getting finished off. That the designer's still working on it, so I can't like go, it's all shiny and brand new yet. Although by the time you want to listen to this podcast, it might be ready. So go to barryselby.com, and on the home screen, you can click on a link that signs you up for a discovery session with me. At the bottom of the home screen, you can join my email list very easily, so you can be subscribed about what's going on and also get notes and invitation to things that are happening. Quite a lot's happening recently, so definitely want to stay tuned by getting onto my email list. If you want to drop me an email, you can email me at barry@barryselby.com. As of this week, my relationship readiness assessment quiz is live. I got it running finally. I finally got the developer to fix a couple of things that weren't working, and it's now live. So I sent out an email to my email list for them to use it. But if you want to jump in and have a look at it yourself, you go to barryselby.com/quiz, and you can test drive it yourself. And more information is coming on that later on, but definitely you can jump in right there. So if you want to know if you're ready for a relationship, take the quiz. Anyway, on my social media, you can find me as Barry Selby on all the platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, excuse me, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. It's the real Barry Selby on Instagram, and also now on Threads, because I'm using that one. Threads is Instagram's version of Twitter. So many things to play on. Basically, go to a website or drop me an email. It's much easier than all the social media platforms. They're so crazy right now.
It's so crazy. Really, they're just like, why do you keep changing your names? I don't know. It's my head hurt. And we'd love for you to watch our replays and send it out to your family and friends if they're having challenges in their dating life. And we're live here every week on Thursday, 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern, and all the times in between. So liking, subscribing, sharing, we'd be so grateful about that. And we also are on audio, so you can watch us if you'd like, but you can take us Christmas shopping or Hanukkah shopping. Today's the last day.
Or to the gym after.
Walking off that turkey dinner that you had over Thanksgiving. Yep. on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all your favorite streaming services out there.
Absolutely.
And we'll be back next week with our Christmas show. We're going to talk about something really important about the holidays. So tune in.
Absolutely.
And you get to see I'll be in a red sweater and a white hat because I have to be all Christmassy.
I'll see what I can do to match.
Yeah, I'm giving you a heads up, Mr. Selby.
I appreciate that.
See you all next week. Bye-bye.
Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week.